We have
Am I on
press.
camera?
Yeah.
Press.
What's that?
That's the press.
That's the press. I'm Fiona Taylor.
Hi, Fiona. Rob Miller from Community Futures.
Hello, Rob.
Hi, Elisa Saunders, Merritt.
Hello, Elisa.
Hi, Diana Loy.
Hello, Diane.
Todd Dean.
Todd.
Atalka.
Atelka. That's a pretty name.
Daryl Brooks.
Daryl.
Jenny.
Hi, Jenny. Back there.
Hello, I'm Robin Poon from the Merritt News.
Hello, Robin.
And Jade from the Merritt Herald.
Okay.
I'm Heather
You're Heather. I met you outside.
Thought I recognized you.
All right. I am Fiona Taylor. I am I have a mouthful of a title. I'm the Deputy Project Officer from BC Hydro's Smart Metering Program, and my colleague is Cindy. She may have already introduced herself.
I have. I'm Cindy Verscher. I'm the Manager of Communications for Smart Metering.
Okay, so you will have a copy of some slides. I'll talk you through some of these slides. It's a bit informal, so mostly I think, what have we got, 45 minutes or so, an hour? And maybe we can take questions as we go, or I'll try to get through it and you can ask some questions afterwards. So let me start by putting our program in context. So, do we have a copy of the meter? Do we have the smart meter?
We have the meter.
So, meters are actually a part of the distribution grid, the infrastructure that delivers electricity to all of us. It powers our homes, it powers our businesses. If you have teenage children, it powers all the entertainment devices that they have. It powers our infrastructure, our industry. It is something, it's the delivery of electricity to all of us who use it. And electricity is something that people really take for granted unless you either don't have it. So when there's significant outages or power quality issues, that's when people sort of realize that electricity is something that we take for granted. Or you can't do something you want to do. And usually what that looks like, and that's why I quite often get in longer conversations with councils. So the kinds of things that communities want to do. They want to use biomass, they want to use tidal power if they're out on the west coast. They want to use geothermal assets that might be in their communities. So they want to actually create power for themselves. They want microgeneration, they want microgrids, and they want to create power and they want to sell some of that power back to BC Hydro. I actually think we heard that you have Merritt Green Power coming in here, which is a power plant where you're going to use local biomass to generate power, and the intention and the hope is to sell some of that power back to BC Hydro as well. So there's a lot of communities that want to do local economic development as well as local sustainability using electricity resources, and frankly our grid is not that able to support that right now. And so why are we not able to support that? Well, because our grid is old. Our grid is more than 50 years old. The demand on it has been dramatically increasing over the last 50 years. I think almost every industry that you can think of has modernized and upgraded. And all of those upgrades have been in the perspective of looking for more electricity, not less. So our infrastructure has not kept up with it. We really are operating on a 50-year-old infrastructure. But even more than the age of and the archaicness of our grid is that it's one way. So we generate power in the dams, we transmit it through approximately 75,000 miles of wire. Some of that is high voltage transmission lines, some of that is lower voltage distribution lines. But nonetheless, we have 75,000 kilometers of line, one way through a meter, which is a measurement device, into our homes and our businesses. A lot of the things we need to do to enhance reliability and enable some of these community businesses that we want to develop requires a two-way flow of electricity. If you want to sell your power back to hydro, we have to be able to measure it coming back on the grid. And today we can't do that. We do not have a grid that can heal itself because it's one way. If something breaks it in a certain place, we have to just throw resources on it and work around the clock to restore it. We can't divert that power to go through a different mechanism. So we don't have that two-way self-healing capability on our grid. So those are some real challenges with the grid. And where smart metering fits in is that we are one of the early initiatives that Hydro is undertaking to start that journey of modernizing and upgrading the electricity grid that we are responsible for. We don't serve the whole of British Columbia, so we're talking about the territory that BC does serve. And so what our part of that journey is we are upgrading the measurement capabilities of the system. So a friend of mine, a good friend of mine that's a councillor in the city of Vancouver, once equated this to the idea of, imagine if you were trying to plan the transportation plan for your community, the bus routes, the public transportation, and all you knew was your bulk ridership. So you knew that there was 100,000 rides on a bus in a year in your community, but you don't know how many bus routes do you need, how often should they run to certain areas, do you use a bigger bus or a smaller bus in certain areas. You don't know anything that gives you enough information to plan it at a more granular level. All you know is your bulk ridership. That's what it's like for us. We know how much total electricity is consumed on the grid, but we don't know how much is being used where our challenges are. We have some parts of the province where we have voltage, we have power quality issues. If you see a lot of flickering, I don't know if you guys, I think you have actually some challenges in Merritt on that front. Those are power quality issues, and we're not able to change the voltage enough to be able to keep that in the right range. So we don't have that. We don't have that granularity of information that lets us plan for, manage, and operate the system as if we knew which buses needed to go where. So that's what we're all about. We're about adding, at the end of the day, adding almost 2 million eyes and ears, measurement devices to the system that allows us to understand what is happening with the electricity and what we need to do to put the right assets in place, to send enough power to the right locations, to stop wasting power, because we waste a lot of it now. You can't control it if you can't measure it. So that's our program at its highest level. I think in your slides there's, it's a page before that, page 4. On page 4 of your slides, there's a picture there that talks about the total scope of our program. So it's not just meters. There's actually 4 major components to the program. The first is the metering system itself. This is where the smart meters like this fits in. But what we're doing is we're replacing single function meters that all they do is they just have a wheel that clicks every time electricity flows through it. It just clicks, 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 and stores it up. We're replacing those with a smart meter and the system that goes behind it. So it's an end-to-end metering system that gives us the information that we need to manage the grid. So that's about half of the total budget for our program. That's the metering system itself. We're also implementing some meters on our side. We're implementing some meters at substations and at feeders. And those meters are designed to help us with the big problem that we've been seeing growing since 2006, and that is theft. Theft of power, and I'm going to come back to this. The theft of power is a significant issue in British Columbia right now, more so than many other jurisdictions. And what we need to be able to do is measure power. So now we will have the capability of knowing how much power is coming through a substation, how much is going through a feeder, and each feeder serves between 8 and 12 homes, homes or businesses. So we'll know how much is coming through a feeder and how much is being consumed by us as we use the power. And then we can run analytics on that. We call it electricity inventory analysis. And we can see how much power is disappearing. Some of that is just the physics of delivering electricity. There's line loss. Electrons shed off the wires when you're transporting them. So some of it is just losing electricity. Some of it is bulk programs, like street light programs. You know, we don't meter every street light on your streets. So that's a bulk use of electricity. But we can see what that looks like. We can see what the profile of that is. There's probably 8, 9 legitimate reasons why power disappears in that measurement. But the theft of power has a particular signature. We can tell that this is unaccounted for energy. It doesn't, it's not attributed to any legitimate business reason. And then we send out field investigation resources to confirm that it really is a theft, and if it is a theft, to shut down that power, because when you're stealing power, you've created an unsafe situation. So that's what that part of our program looks like. And I'm gonna talk a bit more about theft, so I'll move on. The third part of our program, we call it the in-home feedback tools. What this is conservation tools that we are building, and infrastructure that we are building to put tools in the hands of our customers so that they can help manage conservation as well. There's two big ones. The first one is a internet portal, an internet website that will be part of PowerSmart. Yeah, I don't know if you guys are PowerSmart customers, but we do have a lot of conservation initiatives out there already through our PowerSmart business unit. So we are going to make available to all of our customers at no charge a conservation portal which shows the information that the meter has collected. The meter collects only hourly information. Once the electricity has flowed through the meter and into your home, we have no idea what's happening with it. We do not know which devices you're using, what appliances you're using, what you're doing with the power. We only know how much has flown through the meter, and we only collect that on an hourly basis. So every hour the meter will collect how much power has been used, it will collect 3 voltage measures, and it will collect some power quality information. And it'll store that, and then 3 times a day it will ship that information back into BC Hydro. That hourly information is what we're going to make available to customers off their own website. It is something you have to enroll for. It is something you'll have to put, password protected and other security around that because it is your information. But we'll make that available. So that's the one tool in the in-home feedback space. The second tool in the in-home feedback space we are enabling is, do any of you guys have cell phones? Mobile phones? Yeah. Do you use Bluetooth with that? So it's sort of like that. So the meter comes, and actually when we install the meter, the in-home feedback radio is actually deactivated. But if you go to the aftermarket, to Best Buy or Rona or any of those places that sell energy conservation tools, it might be a programmable thermostat, it might be an in-home display device, smart appliance, home energy management systems, which are more software-based. You can also go today and buy something they call plugs, which it looks like a plug. You plug it into an outlet, but it's smart, so you can plug your appliance into the plug and the plug into your outlet, and then you can see on your computer what that appliance is using for electricity. So there's a number of things that you can buy in the aftermarket. And some of them you can pair with your meter, like you would pair your Bluetooth with your cell phone.
You got it turned off, you said.
Yeah, so when you do that, you contact BC Hydro. BC Hydro activates the radio, and then it uniquely pairs that meter with your device. So this is a customer choice type of infrastructure. And what we're doing with our program is we're making sure that that pairing is secure and complete. Because you could do that today. You can go to the market today and you could buy an in-home display device. They're usually collar-based. And you can put it on your meter and you can see how much you're consuming, real time, in your own home, sanctity of your own home. You could decide that I'm a neighbor and I'm having some really good parties and I haven't invited you to them and you want to know what's going on. How much electricity am I using? You can move that collar onto my meter and then you'll see how much consumption is, how much energy I'm using will be displayed on your home. That is not secure pairing. That is what the world looks like today. So what we're doing with our infrastructure is we are making sure that that infrastructure is secure so that if you want to make those choices, you can, and you can pair it up with the meter uniquely. Just like a Bluetooth pairs with your cell phone uniquely. You can't flip them around. You have to go to a different process. So that's sort of the in-home feedback piece. And in the interest of time, I'll move on. But the key point off of this part of the discussion is that it is more than just the meters. It is an end-to-end metering system, not only for the residential commercial meters, but also for metering on the utility side. And it is about adding almost 2 million eyes and ears to the system so that we can collect that information at a granular enough level to be able to use it to manage the system. Which brings me to the business case. Sorry. What was that? What was that?
George Orwell.
Yeah, just a
Oh,
science
there.
fiction thing.
Well, we can talk about that. No, it's not very Orwellian. Let's talk about the benefits a little bit. So, from a business case perspective, this program delivers $1.6 billion worth of benefits. When you net everything out, when you net the cost to implement, you net the cost to operate it, because we will be creating jobs, we will be a net, that managing 2 million additional devices in the field will take some maintenance and management. Net all of that out, and it delivers over $500 million worth of net positive benefits. What that translates into is reducing the pressure on rates. We are a regulated utility, we are subject to regulatory accounting, and when the utility saves money, that translates into reduced pressure on rates. We are one of the few, if not the only program underway at Hydro right now which is in the position to actually reduce the pressure on rates. The beauty of this is 80% of those benefits are delivered by BC Hydro. So if, as a customer, you don't change your behavior in any way, you don't take advantage of any of our conservation tools, you don't change your consumption in any way, we are still delivering 80% of the benefits, and that helps to keep the business case strongly powerful. There's 12 different benefit streams in this program, but the big 5 are outage management, theft detection, reducing electricity waste, particularly on our side. We hope customer conservation, we hope customers will show up and use those tools and conserve their own energy. And we have lots of reasons to be optimistic about that. There's been study after study done in North America, pilots of in-home display devices and other types of things. Did I leave Cindy, is the Power Smart competition stuff, did I leave that over there somewhere?
I have left
I'll
it
find
over
that
at
for you. No, I know I had it here.
Did you bring it?
Pilots have shown that when customers are given access to their own consumption information, they will save 5 to 15% of their electricity consumption without much effort. They did a pilot in Washington, D.C. They thought, it's a lower socioeconomic environment, so surely people who are lower income won't be able to save that kind of energy. What they found is it was an average of 40% savings from that pilot, because these are people that are strongly motivated to conserve electricity and get their bills down. We just recently ran, Global TV did a competition. I don't know if any of you guys saw it, but they selected 2 families to compete against each other to see who could reduce their consumption of electricity the most off of their baseline. So they picked 2 families, and they used information, so we collected information off their meter manually so that they could use that information because the infrastructure is not there yet. And they had from PowerSmart, they had an energy manager consultant that helped them. Both families reduced electricity consumption by over 80%. And if you talk to them, 80% is not sustainable. You wouldn't be able to do that month over month, year over year. But they said the first 20 to 30% was easy to get. So we know that it's out there. We know that there's enough evidence or enough examples where being given that kind of information does help. So that's the customer conservation piece. And then the 5th one is asset management. We, and I'll talk about that a little bit when I talk about theft. I wanted to talk a little bit about the 3 of them, and in that thing there's some pictures about it. So outage. We do not know when your power is out today. Your internet company does, your phone company does, if your service is not being provided. Your cable company does. We don't. You have to call us, you have to tell us that your power is out. Eventually we'll get calls from customers and we'll be able to know that there's a power outage in a particular area. We won't know where it started, so we send the crews to the area, and they literally have to drive up and down the lines until they find where the line has been broken. And then they can start to work on that repair. Worse than that, once they think they fixed the power, and you'll see that in some of our public service messages at this time of year, because we are headed into storm season, you'll see that we ask you to keep your porch lights on if you have a power outage, because the crews need to see those porch lights come back on. That's how they know that the power has actually been restored to an area. And quite often they'll leave the area before all of the power outage has been fixed. We call those nested outages. That's when there's multiple breaks on the lines. and there might be a power outage within a broader power outage, but we don't know that because it looks like it's being restored. Smart meters tell you when it has enough battery power that when it knows electricity is not going through it anymore, it can send a signal back to BC Hydro, I'm out of power. And we see it on a big board that says that that meter is out of power. We can see where the outage started. We can send the crews directly there. But more important than that, we cannot let a crew leave the area until all of the meters have been restored in that area, because we can see where those nested outages are still reporting that they don't have power. So maybe it's not as big of a deal if your crews are based in Burnaby and your outage is in New West. It's a big deal if the power outage is in Port Alberta and the crews are in Nanaimo. And it's 4 or 5 hours have gone by, and then we still have the outage, and then we get the customer phone calls that says, when are you coming? And then we realize there's a nested outage, and now we have to send those crews from Nanaimo back again. So not only is that customers out of power for longer, businesses have an economic impact from that, but it's also costing all of us as ratepayers a lot more money, because those crews are now on double time and triple time depending on what their circumstances are. So power outage management is a key benefit area. Theft is a big benefit area as well. Oh, here it is. Here we go. Here's, I'll pass that around. That is the 80% from the families that it sort of describes how those families, those two families, were able to produce that much electricity. Let's talk about theft. Theft of power, and I'll pass some photos around on that. I'll pass them around this way. Theft of power for us is first and foremost a public safety issue. We have, particularly, we've always had a certain amount of meter tampering. And so the old meters are quite easy to tamper with. You can pull them off the wall and people put, and it's dangerous. Every time you touch a meter, you're touching live electricity. So, don't smash your meter because you've just created a live electricity situation. But people will steal power off the old meters by blocking, they'll put copper sleeves on the back, and that will not record all electricity. There's a number of ways that you can steal power by tampering with your meter. We've always had that. What we've seen in the last few years is a dramatic increase in the amount of power that's being stolen and increasingly dangerous ways that it is being stolen. What that's resulting in is more and more fires, house fires. In the presentation itself, I think you have this picture. This is a house right next door to an elementary school in Vancouver. Power was being stolen at the meter, it got overloaded, resulted in a panel fire which spread to the rest of the house. So, we're seeing a significant increase in fires. We're seeing a significant increase in premature transformer failures. So you'll see that from the pictures that are going around. Transformers, to the naked eye you don't see anything. If you look at them under an infrared camera, you'll see that some of them are burning hot. And what that means is that there's more electricity, like that picture right there. You could just hold that up so people can see. You see how that, to the naked eye, it just looks like 3 transformers. But you look at that same set with an infrared camera, that transformer has got so much power going through it that we don't know about. Because we haven't sized that right. That power's being stolen, and all we've got is bulk ridership. So we don't know that. We haven't built for that. And that can explode. That's got oil in it, and the situation it creates is fires, and hot burning oil is spilled around the neighborhood. When we first did our business case, that resulted, we estimated about 100 premature transformer failures a year. That's a significant cost, but it's a significant public safety issue. Cindy does a lot of visits around the province now with our crews, and our crews are telling her that we might be experiencing as much as that in their areas alone, about 100 premature transformer failures in their own areas alone. So this is a significant safety issue and a significant cost issue. Even more than that, though, what we've been seeing a significant increase in since 2006 is tapping directly into the distribution lines themselves, bypassing the meter entirely. And so on the back page there, you'll see some examples of that. You'll see that they go into poles. They gouge out the back of poles, and they run tubing like that, and they run a live wire up the back of the pole, and they tap into the distribution line. That's a live pole now in every one of our communities. There is not a community that is immune from this. And one of those pictures we show where they've actually gouged out the back of the pole and put their own transformer coil in there. So they're actually down on that lower side. That's in the Prince George area. That's the back of the pole, and they actually have a transformer coil in there, and they're taking the power directly from the transformer.
Instructions are on the internet.
I find it shocking.
Oh, good one.
I'm sure you put that.
So this is a significant issue now, because this is live infrastructure in all of our communities. If there was a car accident that hit that pole, that's a live pole. It's an employee safety issue for us, because when we go on our pole inspections now, we've told our crews that they actually need to investigate the pole for tampering before they can do the real work. And from a first responder perspective, it's really unsafe. So they are responding to a law enforcement issue or a fire, and there's infrastructure that is live that they don't know is live. So it's a significant issue, and that is our mandate. BC Hydro is not a law enforcement agency. It is not our job to go out and find grow-ups. Some grow-ups are stealing power, some are not. What our mandate is to deliver electricity, which is inherently a dangerous product. It's our job to deliver it safely and reliably to consumers that sign up with us for electricity. And so this is smack in the center of our responsibility, correcting the safety issues that are coming with this stuff. That's the safety issue. Let's talk about the financial impact of that. The cost today of that power that is being stolen is $100 million. That is what each one of us in this room right now are helping to subsidize for the theft of power. It flows into our rates.
Doesn't that support a
We pay for
billion-dollar industry though?
So,
The other conversation.
Right.
can we tax that industry?
Why don't we tax that industry? We can have that political discussion.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
We can go for a beer after this.
Yeah.
That
We
conversation.
can have it in the context of the live forum, not over here.
So it's significant, and the last data point I was going to put out there on it is that since 2006, we have actually run 4 theft pilots in 4 different communities in BC. 3 of them, we shut down the power as soon as, we dealt with the power theft as soon as we found it. In one of them we watched, because we wanted to see what people, what they did and what happened. In that community where we watched it, by the time we shut it down, 45% of the power going into that community was being stolen. So it's a significant amount. So theft is a big issue. I wanted to talk about the third one as well, and this is the electricity waste that is occurring. And so what happens right now is we don't have enough information about electricity and how it's being used and how it's flowing through the system, so we really maximize it. When our generators, dams realize that there's more demand for power, they just put more load out on the system. They put a lot more out on the system than we necessarily need. The more you put on, the more you lose, the more that line loss occurs. So we end up putting a lot more electricity out than we need. We waste a lot of it getting it down across all of this geography. And then if we send more power than you really need, there's no way to store it. So it's wasted. So we are wasting a lot of electricity, which by having the information that we can go and analyze where's the demand on the system, what is happening with load factor on the system, what is happening with power quality on the system, we're able to make those design decisions, put enough transformers in, load tap changes, which changes the voltage of power as it's flowing through the 75,000 kilometers of line, and we can actually manage the supply so that it is closer to the demand on the system itself. And that translates into an enormous amount of cost savings for us, from our side. So that are 3 of the big benefit areas that I wanted to talk about a little bit. So I think the prepared slides, the next ones go into a topic which a lot of people have talked about, which is the radio frequency from smart meters. First off, I do want to say it is radio frequency. I have seen and heard a lot of people talk about the radiation off of meters. It's not radiation. Radiation is at the upper end of the electromagnetic spectrum, and it's more associated with nuclear isotopes. You know, the Japanese nuclear station, after their tragedy over there, that is radiation. What we're talking about is radio frequency. It's down at the lower end of the electromagnetic spectrum. The only thing that's lower on the spectrum than radio frequency is actually the electromagnetic waves that come off the power lines themselves. So, just with that, from a radio frequency perspective, at its top line, if you held this meter 20 centimeters from your head, for the lifetime of the meter, which is at least 20 years, so 20 years of holding this meter at your head at 20 centimeters, your exposure to our smart meters would be equivalent to half an hour on a cell phone. So, 20 years worth of a BC Hydro smart meter is half an hour on your cell phone. The reason for that is radio frequency is a measure of 3 parts: the strength of the signal, how frequently it transmits, and how close to it you are. So from a strength perspective, the power signal off of our meters is 1/100th of the power signal off of a cell phone. And I'm going to turn technical on you for a second. We are governed by federal bodies. So we are governed by Health Canada Safety Code 6. And what it says is that for an uncontrolled environment, like what we live in, if your workplace deals with radio frequency, that's a controlled environment. You can take safety precautions, that's much higher. But for us in everyday life, Health Canada's limit is 600 microwatts per centimeter squared at 20 centimeters. That's the standard for 900 megahertz, which is what these meters operate in. Our meters are they're 2 microwatts per centimeter squared. We've met with various groups, and about 8 months ago we met with an advocacy group in Victoria, and they said, we don't trust Health Canada. We recognize you're governed by it, that's what you need to do, but we don't trust them, we want you to look for a stricter standard. They called for, and the Green Party has called for, standards as they've been implemented in Germany and Switzerland. Germany and Switzerland's standard is 450 microwatts per centimeter squared at 20 centimeters. Significantly lower than Canada's. We're 2. So from there, we decided to benchmark ourselves against the strictest standard in the world that we could find. So we looked everywhere, and we found it in Switzerland. And this is a precautionary principle, a precautionary standard that was put in place for hospitals and schools, for what they call sensitive areas. For normal everyday life, it's 450. For hospitals and schools, it's 4.5 microwatts per centimeter squared. We're 2. So our meters benchmark at less than half a percentage point of Health Canada Safety Code 6, and at less than 50% of the strictest standard in the world that we could find. So from a power perspective, it's a 1 watt radio, it's low power. And for some of you, if you're a bit more technically inclined, it's actually an analog signal when it leaves the meter. I've heard some people say, oh, but it doesn't matter how low your power is, it's the digital spike that is dangerous. There is no digital spike. Digital just refers to the information, but it's converted from a digital profile into an analog signal when it leaves the meter. So when it's actually transmitting, it's transmitting as an analog signal. From a proximity perspective, radio frequency drops off exponentially with distance. So as soon as you get 3 feet away from the meter, which is what, about that much, a sort of cross between metric and, I'm originally from Africa where I learned imperial, and then I came to North America and had to learn metric, so I translate kind of badly. But at about 3 feet from a meter, we're now 1/1000th of it's 0.7 microwatts per centimeter squared. If you get 10 feet away from the meter, the signal off the meter is now 1/1,000,000th of Health Canada standard. It is 0.001 microwatts per centimeter squared. So your proximity to the meter is key, or your proximity to any source of radio frequency. The fluorescent light bulbs in here are emitting radio frequency, but again, it's a proximity issue. And then from a frequency perspective, I urge people who are doing their research to know that there are many different kinds of metering systems on the market today. And the one we've chosen, quite a common one that I've heard people refer to, particularly water meters, a lot of water meters. You don't have them here in Merritt yet, but I think they're coming. They do have them in Kamloops, they have them in a lot of
We
jurisdictions.
have water meters.
Pardon?
We have water meters.
Automated water meters here? I didn't know that. We were
I have
told you
two.
didn't have them yet.
Lucky you.
Not in the residential area,
Not
Oh,
residential.
yeah,
Commercial,
commercial.
Commercial program has?
yeah, not residential.
not at all?
No,
Okay.
no, it was a debate topic.
Kamloops, I think, is doing some residential stuff.
Kamloops has got
Yeah.
a water metering program, so does Nelson, so does a lot of communities. A lot of the water metering systems are actually a type of metering system we call automate. We're very sexy with our terms in the utility industry, so we call those automated meter reading systems as opposed to what these are, which is AMI, which is automated metering infrastructure. They
That
don't
does sound sexy.
We need help.
Sexy yourself. But it means a lot of difference, but let me translate that for you. So a lot of the water metering systems and some metering systems are drive-by. And what that means is the meter is pinging all the time. And it's what it's saying is, are you there yet? Are you there yet? Are you there yet? And once a month, the truck comes by and you're there and it sends its information. But the rest of the time, it's just making sure that you're not there. So you'll see a lot more transmissions. They're still very safe, but you'll see a lot more activity from that kind of a metering system. Other jurisdictions, like sometimes people will talk about Pacific Gas and Electric down in California. There's 4 major utilities in California, by the way, but usually the comparisons are made to Pacific Gas and Electric. We have a much more advanced meter side of the metering system, but they have a much more responsive communication network. And so they are actually highly responsive, and they're sending a lot more information a lot more frequently than we are. What ours looks like is we collect hourly information and store it on the meter. There's no customer information on the meter, just the information about the electricity. 3 times a day that meter wakes up and it sends that information in an encrypted package that's got a whole number of security protocols on it, up to a relay device that it will be mounted on poles up high, away from people, and then that is routed through our backhaul back into BC Hydro's data centers, where the information is unencrypted, matched up with customer information, and then taken from there. So that meter, on normal operations, that meter is transmitting approximately 50 times a day. 3 times it's sending data, and every half an hour it's just doing a connection signal to make sure that it's still on its grid, so to speak. So it is not transmitting that frequently. In all cases, whether it's normal operations or if we're sending a lot of real-time flags, if there's a lot of outages, it's sending those real-time signals. In all cases, these meters communicate less than a minute a day. It's seconds on a normal course of day. It gets a little more if there's a lot of real-time flags and signals. So that's some highlights on the meter. Now, the last slide that I have in here is we've tested it. We went out and selected a metering system that fit the profile we wanted. We've configured it with choices that reduce the profile. Let me tell you another design decision we made. In Ontario, and I won't mention names, but one of the utilities out there, the metering system that they have deployed, they actually have, they've put that collector or that relay device combined with their meter unit, which means about 1 in 600 houses out there will actually have the collector right on the side of the home. So there's a lot more traffic through that meter because all the other meters are sending information and routing it through that router. In our case, we have completely designed it differently. We are putting the meters on the homes and the businesses outside your home. We're putting our relay devices up on our poles. And if we don't have poles in the area, we're putting it on telephone poles or other infrastructure. And if that's not there, then we're putting it on city infrastructure. So it's way up high and out of the way. So that's another example of a design decision that we have done differently. But what I wanted to point out is that we have tested our meters in a couple of ways. First off, the BC Centre for Disease Control came into our labs. People had raised some concerns to them, so they asked if they could come and test our meters. Of course they could. They came in, they tested our meters, and passed with flying colors. The challenge for the BC Centre for Disease Control is that their instrumentation was not granular enough to actually measure in microwatts. It could only measure in milliwatts. And so they couldn't say exactly what the output of the meter was, or they could say it was less than, and I can't remember what the amount was, but it was less than the bottom that their instruments could measure. So what we did is we went and found an independent telecommunications consulting firm that has a line of business that certifies against Health Canada Safety Code 6. So companies with products and services will hire them to certify their products and services. They're called PlanetWorks. And so PlanetWorks has tested our meters. They did 2 reports, and they're posted on our website. So if anybody wants to have a look at those, they can go find them. We had them test a single meter, and we had them test a meter bank. So simulating, and it was it wasn't in our labs now, it was out in the field, as close to a real world simulation as we could do it. So they tested both of those scenarios. And in the slide that you have in your package, you'll see the results from that. The first picture that's over here on the left, the top line here, well, that's Health Canada's safety code limit. The stuff that's bumbling along on the bottom here, that is the background noise and the meters. You can see in comparison to health, the safety code that we're obligated to meet how low it is. But that's too low to read, so we blew that up a little bit for people to have a look at. And the red that's in that blow up picture, that is background noise. So the way PlanetWorks operates is they use an instrument called a NARDA probe, which is extremely fine measures. It can measure microwatts and it's fully calibrated. So they certify their equipment, they use this NARDA probe, they go into the environment that you want to measure, and they collect the background signal. And they'll monitor for 2 or 3 days. So that's what they did, and they established a baseline. And then we installed the meters, and then they measured the meters for a couple of days to see what was being contributed by the meter compared to the background noise. So if you look at your graph here, you will see red is the background noise. And we did control the environment here. We did make sure that, major things were switched off in the buildings. But fluorescent lights, the wireless server from next door, there's a lot of wireless in an environment. That background noise is really low, and the output from the meters is really low. And so you can see on this graph what we're talking about when we say that the meters is less than half a percentage point of Health Canada's standard. And just for comparison purposes, we added Wi-Fi, because there's so much Wi-Fi and so much cellular out in our world, and to show how it benchmarked against that. So like I said, that's been tested. It confirms, and I'll read you this, the single meter report was less than 2 microwatts per centimeter squared. It was actually 2.3 counting the background noise. And the total transmission time for the 2 days that those meters were actively transmitting was less than 3 seconds. For the meter bank, it was less than 20 seconds. So what happens in a meter bank or a meter room, the profile of these meters is such that as soon as you get 4 or more meters in a room, they peak at the strength of 2 meters. And that's because how close they are and how they get the signal out, they actually are much more efficient than a single meter on a house. It peaks at 2 meters, And they measured that. So it doesn't matter if you've got 10 meters or 40 meters in a room, the profile will be about the same. And the transmission time in the meter bank was less than 20 seconds over 2 days. But you can go and see those reports for yourself. So the bottom line is we are very confident that our meters are safe. Now, I did bring along, just for fun, this is more of a retail device that, I don't know if you can buy them here, we actually
You order
imported
them off
this
the
one.
internet out of Germany for as low as $49 for Gauss meters, depending on the frequency.
Yeah, this measures Gauss, but it actually measures milliwatt as well. This one comes from Asia. But it's quite cool because now it's measuring in milliwatts, not microwatts. So when you look at it, you have to add another 0.0 to get it to convert it. And on the back, I have a little decoder ring. So if you were looking at Health Canada's standard, this would show 6,000, right? Because Health Canada is 600, so this in milliwatts would show 6,000. If you were looking at the Swiss standard that I was talking about, it would show 45. Our meters, it would show 20. So, you know, this is showing how much radio frequency we're all dealing with right now. That's how much we're exposed to right now. And you can see it's bouncing around, but it's bouncing around in really low frequency. And off my cell phone right now, I do have a cell phone, I am going to see how many wireless devices are in the area. Do you have that already pulled up?
No, my berry is dead.
Your berry is dead. Oh. Let me find it then.
There's one about 7 feet away from you.
Yeah, there's 4 that my cell phone is picking up right now, including Chambers. They're all secure. I can't piggyback on any of them.
There's a fifth one that kicks in sometimes too.
Is there? But here we are, you know, an environment with fluorescent lights, cell phones all around us, 4 wireless routers in the vicinity that are strong enough for my cell phone to pick them up. You've got a, what is that? That's cool.
It's a blade one.
Oh, my husband
I've
has
had
one
1,
of those
2, 3, 4, 5 in here
that you can pick up.
Yep.
And you can see that its radio frequency output is really low. The Gauss meter measures the magnetic output, yeah, rather than the radio frequency.
That looked to me before I saw you turn it on like a Gauss meter.
Pardon?
That looked to me before you turned it
Right.
on like a Gauss,
Yeah.
Gauss meter.
You can flip it, one of those buttons flips it
Flips it
to
on.
measure in Gauss. And what happens with the Gauss meter, folks, is that at the lower end of the electromagnetic spectrum, so for us, with our electricity infrastructure on transmission lines, we are operating at the lower end.
Quite a difference for
And so the magnetic output is now more the health question than a radio frequency output. And so what Gauss meters measure is what's the magnetic output to make sure that they're complying with
How much
standards.
was that, copy of that?
I think it was about $30.
That's a
So
very good
this
deal.
is a retail
Oh, there it
product,
is,
right?
yeah.
It is
see
certainly
that?
not calibrated to the
The
same
one.
level as a NARDA Pro. You and I could not go out
Put
and
the
buy
dual
a NARDA Pro.
functionalities on this on it.
So what's the safety standard now? 'Cause
If
this
you
thing
would,
just jumped to 2 point something. What's that?
Oh my God.
I'll turn my phone off.
We're gonna talk.
It's her phone.
My phone.
yeah, Cindy and I will do that. We'll call each other in now and again.
So it has to go to 600?
It has to go to 6,000
6,000.
to hit Health
We
Canada.
get 2.
We hit 2. Ooh.
So it's
So, you know, it's just for fun, but to put it in a little bit of context, and I can flip that to Gauss, let me flip that to Gauss. And I actually don't know as much about Gauss, but this is operating, so it's around 4,000 Gauss under a large transmission line. We're at, magnetic output is just not an issue in this kind of environment. Anyway, I just wanted to share some of that with you because it's kind of fun. So that was my 15 minutes of prepared material. I'm
I
not
have
sure.
a few questions for you.
Sure.
Okay, why are you here talking to us and not the people in public, like in a bigger forum?
Well, we have actually talked to, we've provided a lot of information. We have done a lot of public forums and put a lot. One of the things that happens is people don't really listen until it's real. And so, my colleague over here is right now going, Do you know how exhausted my team is from how much communicating we've been doing?
So you've been in Merritt
It's like-
before then?
I think we have been a
It's
Merritt
kind of
before.
like buying a fridge, right? If you ask me what the price of a refrigerator is, I have no idea because I'm not in the market for one and I don't need one. But somebody who needs one will know. And so we have been communicating about the program for years. And it's just that it's not hit people's radar screens until very recently, or until it becomes something that they're dealing with on a daily basis. And so we have been doing a lot of communications up until now, and then we're also, as we go around the province and install meters, we're also meeting with communities at that time as well. And so that's why we're here right now. We're starting to install meters in Merritt. We like to try to get in before that begins, but in this case it wasn't possible. We had UBCM and some other constraints, but we have started to install here, and so we are trying to meet with key groups as well to just let you know what's happening and answer any questions you
And a
have.
lot of councils asked us to wait until after the elections, so we got
Yeah, of course.
hot
Of course.
calls on that.
So there was something in the paper, we've got the papers here, just the other week, remember there was a smart meter awareness or some kind of
Yeah.
event, right, that was local citizen group organized, local stakeholders. Were you folks present at that?
We weren't invited to that,
You weren't invited to that?
no.
But you didn't proactively participate in that, or?
Was that the antes?
I'm not
Sometimes
sure
we
who-
don't know about, so there are a number of chambers, there's a number of councils. On Tuesday night, I was actually at the West Vancouver Residents Association meeting. Some of the more organized groups asked to go to these meetings, and some will say, well, you're welcome to come and talk to us, but we want hydro there at the same time. And they'll contact us, and to the extent that we can, if it's
So
not
you
super
would have
short
come
notice.
had you been invited to that particular event in Merritt? Is that?
It's possible that we would, and we have accepted those types of invitations in the past. And the other thing is that we are actually traveling around the province right now, talking to communities, and we do have it's a pretty rigorous schedule.
Well, I appreciate that.
We also are at thousands of events, so you will find our outreach team almost everywhere. So we have actually really tried to make sure that we can meet people wherever it is that they, want to get information from us. But we can't always fit in last minute
No,
requests.
it's logistics, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for the presentation. I think it's really informative in terms of some of these numbers and that we don't always hear about.
Yeah.
Things get lost in the details, but I have a couple of comments, if I may.
Sure.
Perception is not reality, but it is everything. And just with regard to this particular presentation, I would have found it really useful if there had been the list of the top 5 public concerns over smart meters listed and addressed. It's a great pitch, and I appreciate the information you contain in it, but it does not give me any more information about how you are addressing the concerns. You address it, I think, in the radiation side of it, that's
Right.
great, but there are other things related to that overall smart grid issue and
Right.
yada, yada, yada.
I can
Privacy.
actually.
So just a communications marketing perspective comment. And then the other thing that I guess, again, this is the perception and opportunity for people to be involved and hear about things before they happen. You folks at BC Hydro were down there at our office almost a month ago. Without advance notice, a technician came in to switch out the old meters for a smart meter. And within that week, so this is over 3 weeks ago, my residence was switched out. The following week, I saw in the paper reference to smart meters are coming to town, and if you want information, give us a call. It's a 1-800 number. But it was already a done deal. My meter had been installed already for over a week. So it's kind of public relations after the fact a little bit,
Right.
in my
I'm
perspective.
going to interject here a little bit if you don't mind, Rob. I'm not sure who the technician was that came to your place, but I know the gentleman who knocked on our door, they delivered a letter a week ahead of time saying, we are coming.
Mhm.
And when they knocked on the door, he said, have you received the letter? And yes, okay, because if you haven't received the letter, I'm giving you another one and I'm coming back. He wasn't doing anything unless I
Mhm.
received it, and he made it very clear he was not going to do a single thing
Mhm.
until he had my permission.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
the same as our own.
Yeah,
And he probably
so-
did have the letter, but we've got several front staff, and where it got routed to is another question,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So from
Right.
my perspective as the manager, the first I heard about it,
It was done.
What
Was
is
it
your
you?
business, Rick?
we do regional and community economic development,
Okay.
business counseling, small business
Right.
loans, employment services.
So there's a couple things, let me comment on some of that. The process that's supposed to happen is what you've described. We send out a letter.
Mhm.
When we're coming into the community, we start with advertising, and as Cindy was saying, that's when we say, you know, meters are coming, we'd like to meet with your council, we'd like to meet with your chamber. Any other, we meet with first responders, because there's a lot of safety features in the meters that first responders, particularly fire, are excited about, so we meet with them. So we'll do that, and then and then about 3 to 4 weeks before you're scheduled to get your meter, you would be scheduled to, we send out the letter that you're supposed to get. You know, a little bit of a bumpy start. Some customers might not have gotten their letters, or they might have gotten it a little bit later, or they might have disappeared somewhere in the office. But the normal process for the meter replacement is you'll get that notification, and then on the day, the technician will knock on your door. If you're home, they'll have that conversation. If you're not home, they will go ahead and replace the meter, but then they leave you with a package of information, including phone numbers to call and things like that. That is the metering program. What is also happening is we still run business as usual in the utility. And I don't think we've had a chance to talk about it, but you know, there's a lot of governance over our business. And one of the bodies that governs us is a federal body called Measurement Canada. It's one way that we're quite different from the states. We're isolated from some of the problems that the states have had. So what Measurement Canada does is it ensures the protection, it ensures the accuracy of the meter. And in fact, they're increasing their accuracy standards for smart meters because they're capable of being more accurate. But any business that sells product that is measured, so whether it's the gas station or the gas company or oil companies or us, are governed by Measurement Canada. So what that means for us is on an annual basis, we sample meters. If a meter fails, and it's Measurement Canada representatives in our labs that sample those meters, if a meter fails, the entire cohort is taken out of service. We call those failed sample groups, because again, we're very sexy with
So as a
terminology.
plane that has a problem with the part and they ground the fluid.
Yeah,
Sure.
so we ground the entire meters, and that means we have to go replace them. So we are we have been replacing about 40,000 meters in the last couple of months because of business as usual. And we don't usually notify on those. We never have. We are starting to now because people are getting them mixed up with the smart meter program. You'll get a smart meter because that's what we have. We don't have conventional meters in stock. Our warehouses are completely switched over. These are our new standard. But sometimes a circumstance like yours might actually be a failed sample group. That Measurement Canada said you have to take those out of service and we have to replace them. And just, you know, to show that they mean it, when we have a certain period of time to replace those meters. If we don't do that, our penalty is $5,000 per meter per day until we take those meters out of service. Because they will not let customers take the risk of an inaccurate meter. So it might be,
I appreciate that.
it might be something like that, but it's a good point.
Just said one final thing that I'll reply. BC Hydro was part of the benefit structure for the Columbia Basin Treaty, was it not?
You know, I don't know a lot about that.
Just wondering what percentage of our electrical generation is through
As
the
part of
Columbia
that.
Basin Treaty and goes south to the States
Do you know?
and the
No,
value of that?
I can't speak to that either.
Why don't,
Yeah.
let me follow up on that
We
for
can
you,
take
Rob,
that
if
one.
you're okay with giving me your.
Because I believe it's 2015 that treaty's to be renegotiated. And when we're talking, you know, that one of the rationales here is $100 million in theft, prevention or limitations of that number. I'm just curious about how that relates to the overall value, what
Right.
that Columbia Basin Treaty is worth and the nature of how much power goes down there. There's a lot of concern among certain communities that perhaps that hasn't been the best deal for British Columbia and residents over the years.
I don't know
Or
about.
that BC Hydro's gonna shut off everybody's power so they can send more energy down south.
Well, that would be the question or the statement. That's exactly what you then create a grid structure so that you're a prime user and under free trade. Now, as I understand it, if there's a requirement for water or any essential commodity, you're obliged to provide it. So
I always thought it
now
was
we've
more
got a way to
about
channel
what
it down to
futures.
the big users in California and Arizona.
You know, one of the things that's really interesting about our power structure is we're blessed with clean power. 95% of our power is generated from hydro. So we're blessed with sources of clean power. The challenge about it is that it's seasonal. So we actually end up importing electricity 9 out of every 10 years. And so we find ourselves with a lot of capacity at certain times of the year and not enough capacity at other times of the year. And so there's a little bit of, conceptually arbitrage that needs to happen to keep us all whole. But I mostly know about that as, a resident of BC. It's not my part of the business, but I'll follow it.
Well, there's also, if you're gonna look at that, there's an extensive relationship, which you probably aware with Alberta, in terms of the transmission
Yeah.
joint use protocols.
One of the things about the fact that BC Hydro is a large enough utility that we're actually a part of the national interchange to the States and to Alberta. What that does is it actually we are one of the most heavily governed businesses. So at a federal level, we're governed by Health Canada, Environment Canada, Industry Canada, Measurement Canada. Coming back to my point, at a provincial level, the Provincial Medical Office, the Privacy Commissioner, BC. So it's not the Utilities Commission. The Utilities Commission governance is a financial prudency. They don't govern anything else. So from a privacy perspective, it's actually the Provincial Privacy Officer and the legislation, the Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy Act, that governs us. Even the apiculturist, which is I don't know if you know that, we have a BC apiculturist. They specialize in bees and other winged insects. So we're governed by a lot of that provincially.
Well, because so much of the radiation problem has been suggested as
And
bee
there's-
colony
right.
collapse.
And there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that radio frequency is a factor in bee colony collapse, and we've become experts in that. We can share that with you if you're interested. But the point I was going to make is that because we are actually part of a national interchange and an international interchange, we actually also come under the jurisdiction of NERC, which is the National Energy Reliability Council, protection of critical cyber assets. So that means that all of our infrastructure that we put in place has to meet a threshold of security and security of access that is governed by NERC, which is a North American wide.
So that's an interesting lead, I think. So when you talk about security and critical security,
Yeah.
are you putting in electromagnetic pulse protection on the new transformers as they get replaced out? So EMPs, which has now become